So UFC 8, David versus Goliath, February 16th, 1996. As the 21st century dawns, a new breed of fighter emerges, spanning all disciplines with the finesse of a master martial artist and the guts of a seasoned street brawler, the ultimate fighter. The future is here, now, tonight, is the words of Bruce Beck as we open the show yet again with another highlight package from the previous UFC events. And then we preview the super fight between Ken Shamrock and Kimo, the Hawaiian fighting legend. They bill this as a David versus Goliath style tournament where smaller guys will face bigger guys. And for the time up until they would then split the tournaments into different weight classes, they would refer to the fighters as a David or Goliath depending on their size, as opposed to traditional weight classes we see today. Like, none of the fighters in these early days were ever called heavyweights, light heavies, middleweights, or whatever. They're just referred to as a David or a Goliath. You open up not to the city, the country, the island of Puerto Rico. Instead, we come up to the moon in the sky, then transition to the Ruben Rodriguez Coliseum in Bayamon, Puerto Rico. 13,000 in attendance. This is the largest UFC crowd to this point, beating the 9,000 in New York for UFC 7 Brawl in Buffalo. First of all, we run through the rules of the octagon and we never see our commentary team. We just get right into the first fight, and for the first time we see the Predator Don Frye making his debut against Thomas Ramirez. Don Frye makes the walk with Dan Severn in his corner, which is the opposite of what we've seen at the Ultimate. Thomas Ramirez is 41 years old, looking like he's auditioning for today's heavyweight division. He weighs over 400 pounds and is the local fighter on this card, even though he was born in the Bronx in New York. Rich Goins is back for the intros, and he's not bad. He's better than when he started, which is always ideal. It still isn't great. He keeps referring to the crowd as being from San Juan, which I'm pretty sure is different from Bayamon, but the Puerto Ricans can correct me if I am wrong. Don Frye slimes out Thomas Ramirez in 8 seconds. Okay, moving on. No, seriously, he put him on a fucking shirt. UFC commentary has done some panicking before, but I would have been panicking for this guy. He looks like he has checked out of this mortal coil, and he's the hometown boy, if you count being born in New York as being native to Bayamon, Puerto Rico, or San Juan, because to Rich Goins, it's all the same. Now, I will say, we never seen commentary, but it is Bruce Beck, Jeff Blatnick, and Don Wilson, just in case anybody was wondering. I never really feature sound on these, just because, UFC really likes to crack down on stuff like that, but yeah, that is our commentary team for this evening. But next up, we have a debutant, Joe Moreira. And they don't compare him, they ask the question, can this guy be the next Royce Gracie? For literally no other reason other than he's Brazilian and in a gi. Oh wait, he's taking the gi off. His opponent is Paul Varelans, and you will notice he is not called a trap fighter anymore after Don Wilson fucking cooked Tank Abbott's pit fighter style at the last event, calling it bullshit. And I mean, fuck it, Jesus Christ. Look at these two, right? What kind of matchup is this? I get that it's David versus Goliath, but this is like Santa versus one of his fucking elves. Now, I assume Joe here watched his countryman, Marco Ruas, destroy Varelans with some leg kick cheese. How is that not your first move? Like, why not just go for that straight away when you know it's effective? Why are you clinching this guy so much bigger than you? And why is he able to push him back like that? Jesus Christ, Joe has some serious strength. This fight is really, really slow. Varelans plods a prime Sean Strickland, bringing his knee up every step because he suffers that badly from the PTSD after the Ruas fight. And Joe just looks afraid to get hit. Like, why is he not using these leg kicks? If you're competing in UFC at this point, right, you must have been watching. And especially when your opponent has had fights previously in UFC. Are you telling me you haven't seen this? Like, Varelans has lost his last 2. And Joe still has absolutely no clue how to get at this guy. So after 10 minutes of Joe Moreira running away from Varelans, no surprises here, Varelans gets the win. Moreira maybe edged strikes, but we cannot reward this pussy behaviour by giving this guy a win. So this was a nice cardio session for the plodding Paul Varelans as the crowd boos both men. But the all-important decision goes to Varelans, unanimous, and that is one of the worst fights we have ever seen. And there's some tough competition for that. Next up, we have Jerry Bolander versus Scott Ferrozzo. JB is from Shamrock's gym Lions Den, so I'm already worried about this. Scott Ferrozzo's tits are hanging out of his singlet, and so now I'm really worried. Damn though, Ferrozzo's got a little bit of speed, and he throws JB, and I mean, he does it twice, so like, holy shit, I'm impressed. Ferrozzo just starts pressing JB against the cage. JB attempts the choke. He's using Ferrozzo's singlet to try and like leverage it, but Ferrozzo, as the bigger man, just weight bullies and smothers JB on the floor. So thank God Big John stands this up. They check the cut on Ferrozzo's face. They decide that he can continue. We restart, and again Ferrozzo just charges JB against the cage, holds him there. We get another break, and back to the fence we go. Good lord, this is bad. JB tries to choke Ferrozzo with his own singlet again, and attempts to throw. Well, Ferrozzo attempts to throw. He then gets caught in the gilly and taps. Thank goodness that is over. And in the last review, I said the first round of matches were the best round of matches, and they always are the best round of matches. Usually the skill differential makes for some quick finishes, but good lord, they had to go and embarrass me like that. Serving up these two fights back to back in the middle of the first round. This is not looking good. Not to worry, because it is about to get a lot better. Because the last fight of this first round is a fucking belter. We have the debut of Gary Big Daddy Goodridge, the arm wrestler. Now, Goodridge famously lied on his resume. He's told a story before saying that he had a black belt, 5th and 4th degree, and fucking everything, in this, in that, all of it, whilst only ever having been an arm wrestler. But not to worry, if I have learned anything over these last 8 events, it is that everyone else also lied on their resume too. So this knockout here needs no introduction, an absolutely legendary knockout. This could be one of the most iconic knockouts in UFC history, similarly to the Taylor Tooley Gerard Jordeau knockout from UFC 1. This is one that has lived on in clip form to this day. Goodridge versus Herrera. Holy shit, those are some of the most violent elbows you will ever see. Again, commentary needs to remind you that Paul Herrera is alive, and no wonder. Jesus Christ, they say he may have a broken jaw. May have. His jaw is splattered all over the canvas, along with his brain. That is just an absolutely outrageous knockout from Gary Goodridge. Just insanity. And, I mean, some of the best elbows you are ever going to see. But here are our semi-final brackets as we go to the beach for some pre-fight videos. And here is Don Frye beating up Andy Anderson from one of our previous events. And some final words about Predator and Prey and so on. He's up against Sam Adkins, who is the alternate because Paul Varelans broke his foot in the first round fight. Sam Adkins won his alternate bout in 50 seconds. They never show it, but he won it with punches to the head before the referee stopped the fight. I'm assuming it was ground and pound, but, you know, that's only the people that were there, I guess, will ever know. Now, what the fuck has Sam Adkins turned up in? When he made the walkout, I went to go and write a note, and I'm now just noticing the leg wear that Adkins has opted for here. I'm not sure that's too flattering on his skin colour. Don, like a savage, runs across, takes down Adkins, and just brutalises this poor man. He is caked in blood. He finishes the fight with ground and pound. Official time was 48 seconds. It felt quicker than that. Don Frye absolutely just destroyed this guy. And with that, we then go back to the beach, because where else would we go? And now people may know this or may not know this, but these beach interviews and pre-fight videos are actually the inspiration for this YouTube channel's channel header. If you click on my wee channel button and you go on to the homepage, you will see Kimo standing there on the beach. The initial plan was to have Don Frye on there, and in fact Don Frye is on there. I think if you use TV or desktop you might be able to see Don Frye, but Shamrock and Goodridge were supposed to be on there too, that photo that you see on screen right now. But, you know, maybe we can make some changes to that and fix that up soon. Second semi-final though, back to the point, is Gary Goodridge versus Jerry Bolander, and we will call him JB. So JB attempted to shoot on Goodridge, and Goodridge is far too big for him. He just stuffs the attempt before, and then Goodridge gets the takedown, gets into side control, and here is where we are planted for a little while. Goodridge attempts to get to mount, ends up in guard before JB then reverses, and then he ends up on top himself, who makes it into mount, and now Goodridge is holding on. Maybe not for dear life, that might be too much of an exaggeration, but he is definitely shocked, and JB, I mean, he probably thought in that moment, like, oh man, I could probably get this finish here, but Goodridge is then able to counter himself using just pure power and strength, like no technique, just sits up, boom, takes over. Now he's on top. JB is trying to isolate the right leg of Goodridge because he's at Shamrock's gym, and that's just what they do. But Goodridge says, you know, fuck this, drops some heat on JB's face. Big John stops the fight straight away, and Goodridge is through to the final. Now, here we go. This is where the real money was made tonight. We have arrived at the super fight, Kimo versus Shamrock. Since UFC 3, he has been praying very hard and doing his own thing. He has been preparing for this super fight. We heard in his last interview he's been working on actual technique as opposed to just street brawling. He has his entrance sign, but no cross and no Joe Son. Now, commentary used the phrase the infamous Joe Son, and I don't think I can do a whole video on Joe Son, but I'll throw up some excerpts of his Wikipedia here, right? I never knew that any of this shit had happened when I'd made my previous videos, right? I may have had a laugh and a joke about Joe Son, right? But this shit is really fucking not funny. And I looked up here, right, why Joe Son wasn't with Kimo, like why they weren't together at UFC 8. I ended up on Joe Son's Wikipedia. I don't know what the fuck Joe Son had done up to 1996, but good lord, his Wikipedia does not make for great reading, and in fact is fucking disgusting. Now, I cannot put all this on the screen because it is very disturbing, and I don't want that on this video, and I will not make a video on Joe Son. I had thought about doing one on Kimo, and as a, you know, a sort of two-part Kimo and Joe Son, but definitely not anymore. And I'm not even going to put all this on screen. I'm just going to put the last part on the screen. Or I'm not even going to do that. I'm going to put the summary of what he done on the screen. And I'm just going to leave this up here for a second. But yeah, Kimo's coming out here, not with Joe Son, which is probably for the best. And we hopefully will never see Joe Son again. Anyway, the fight starts. Kimo runs across the octagon and throws a kick to the body. Shamrock takes down Kimo into side control, then half guard. Kimo does his best to hold on to Shamrock, who gets to mount. Like, what the fuck is happening? Like, Shamrock gets to mount, he postures up, he then hesitates, and then Kimo's able to counter, and he ends up on top, landing nasty shots, but Ken is able to still work from the bottom as he tries to roll for the leg lock, gets the knee bar, and retains the super fight championship, beating Kimo and doing it in just under 5 minutes. I can't even believe this. Like, that was the most entertaining super fight Shamrock has had so far, because he actually tried to advance his position, moving between side control, half guard, mount. the hesitation he had was the only reason Kimo could counter. This is the point. Shamrock is good, but he just doesn't do it. He's just too comfortable sitting in guard, but he was able to work from the bottom. He gets his submission. This was good. And he will fight Ken Shamrock will fight Dan Severn in a rematch of their first super fight from UFC 6, and I am worried about that one. But look at where we're at. I was just saying this earlier that, oh, and by the way, there was a fight in the crowd just after the super fight, but I have no idea. Commentary just said that it happened, and then just, oh, quick, move on. And I can't believe I'm sitting here having gone through an entertaining Shamrock super fight and meh first round fights. We had 2 classics and 2 slogs. The semi-finals were fine, but here we go. The time is upon us. We have arrived at the UFC 8 David versus Goliath tournament final. Don the Predator Frye versus Gary Big Daddy Goodridge, who is now out of the gi. They have been talking about how hot it is in the arena tonight, so I'm guessing Goodridge was just feeling the heat at this point and thought he would just go out in the shorts. I find it crazy they're billing this guy, Don Frye, 6'1", 206, as a David. But I guess this is just where we're at. So they clinch up against the cage, transition momentum back and forth. They both attempt takedowns. Goodridge gets the upper hand early, but Frye has Goodridge clinched up against the cage, and Don Frye is going ballistic in the clinch here, landing heavy shots on Goodridge. Goodridge attempts to take the back of Frye after a hilarious takedown attempt. Like, what the actual fuck is going on here? But Don Frye ends up on top and wins the fight with ground and pound as Goodridge taps and his corner throw in the towel at the same time. Don Frye is the UFC 8 tournament winner. He has won the David versus Goliath tournament. They never say how much money he won, but nonetheless, he is the winner. I would assume about 50k. We actually stick around this time to do interviews after the fights. We speak to Goodridge first, who is a very gracious runner-up, by the way. He speaks well, and he gives credit to Frye. Frye gives credit to his team for the win as he celebrates his tournament with the rest of his group. What I did like about this tournament was, and this is definitely looking back with hindsight, because this is the first time we have seen Gary Goodridge, but both guys in the final are proper MMA stars looking back in 2026, you know what I mean? So we've had a star win the tournament before and beat other top of the line guys along the way, but arrive in the final where it's just a one-sided matchup. Here, Goodridge, again, novice at the time, and so is Don Frye, to be fair, 2 novices, but they would go on to become huge MMA stars, and this is just a great final to go back and watch, just based on the name value alone. Like, we've had Severn and Gracie, who at the time, I suppose, were bigger names. In fact, even at then, though, Severn, yeah, if you were in the space, you probably knew. And to a lesser extent, Tank Abbott and Oleg Taktarov, but this was definitely a good final. As far as UFC 8 goes, definitely not a bad event. Not bad at all. The event picked up as it went on, which is rare. It's actually what you kind of hope for, that it builds to the big finish, but normally we do end up starting off hot and then really cooling off at the end. In this case, we had a 50% hit rate in the first round. We had 2 really great moments. Even if you can't say the technical term fight, like, that aspect of it wasn't great, but the moments that both Frye and Goodridge had in the first round were amazing, right? Second round, again, not bad. Don Frye slimed out Adkins, and Goodridge beat Bolander, which retrospectively actually got Fight of the Night from that UFC encyclopedia they published back in the 2010s. Like, they went back and they awarded, I don't think bonuses in terms of giving people money, but they went back and reviewed the cards and then gave what they thought were the best fights of the night and such. And I mean, yeah, look, that's fine, that's whatever. It wasn't my favourite fight. My favourite fight was, funnily enough, the super fight, which is a rarity. But I don't know if I just enjoyed the super fight because my expectations were so low, but I actually enjoyed watching Shamrock wrestle when he's not stuck in guard. Like, when he actually decides, here, I'm going to try and move, he can be fun to watch. And tournament final, I thought, delivered, even though by the end Goodridge was very tired. So as a whole, this event probably ranks amongst the better ones, to be honest. Like, to this point, the crowd in Puerto Rico really helped. They were up for this all night, and that helps so much when watching these events. But will the crowd be up in Detroit, Michigan for UFC 9 Motor City Madness? UFC 9 is the first ever event not to feature a tournament. And then they would go back to the tournament format for UFC 10. So that tells you all you need to know about how this went. Next up at UFC 9, we have the return of both Don Frye and Gary Goodridge. However, the big one, the one we all fear, the main event, the headliner, the super fight, Ken Shamrock versus Dan Severn 2, the rematch from UFC 6 super fight. And folks, I am not looking forward to this one at all. This is going to be, like, I used the term hate-filled rant for my UFC review of Shamrock and Gracie. That could be another one of these. Make sure to subscribe and hit the notify bell to keep up on our journey through the early days of UFC. Things are about to get real ugly, and you're going to want to see it. Remember to like the video, comment your own thoughts below, and I will see you all next time.